birth name is Michael L. Williams, Michael Lewis Williams. That's Lewis. But my spiritual name, I call it my spiritual name, is more than a name, it's a title. MuWanga, Sadaka, Mantu, Nemsayu, Waset. MuWanga, that's MuWanga. Sadaka, Sadakah. Mantu, Muntu. Nemsayu, Nemmsaiu. Waset, Waset.
Why so many names?
Well, those are titles.
All titles.
Yeah. People refer to them as names. You can call them a name, but like I said, my birth name is Michael, that my parents gave me. Michael, Lewis, Lewis Williams. But these not so much name, but MuWanga, Sadaka, Mantu, Nemsayu is a title. The African words coming from African languages as names, but put together for me, I look at them and they are titles. It's a title. It's really one phrase, really, when you look at the meaning of the name, of the words.
Like for me, somebody might say sir every time. Like Mr.
In terms of the name, the title I have, is that what you're saying?
You call them titles, so title like Mr.
No, it's deeper than that. Really, you can say it's a cosmic, cultural title because the names, the words themselves have great spiritual significance. So it's not like an everyday name that people wear or answer to or respond to.
Okay. So where were you born? When were you born?
Well, I was born February 24th, 19. I won't state that name, that year, but
Yeah, what about now?
nah, man, but February 24th.
Young fella.
Yeah,
like you were born in the 50s or 60s. You take that?
Yeah or nay? I say yeah or nay. But I am a Pisces. You know, for those who follow the astrological signs and stuff like that. But you can consider me a Pisces.
What's your parents' name? Who were your parents?
Father name is Leo Williams. That's Leo. My mother Margaret Williams. My father is deceased at this time, and my mother, she still has breath of life and still moving about. Having her beingness. But Leo and Margaret Williams are my parents. And I'm the eldest child of 7. So I'm the eldest. And I always, my mother kind of teased me sometimes. I tease her, because I was the only one out of the 7 she said that was breastfed. And sometimes I tell her teasingly, that I don't need no more milk. So, she said, boy, you just crazy. But yeah. But I was born in Greenville, Mississippi, Washington County, state of Mississippi, whatever. And at the time, my parents were living on the address, as I recall, is 545 West Moore Street. And the doctor that delivered me was a Dr. Noble Frisbee. Yeah, and Frisbee Park is named after him. Dr. Frisbee has made this spiritual transition, but Frisbee Park is named in honor of him.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was a very social activist also in the community, Dr. Noble Frisbee. Yes, so he was my so-called deliverer.
10, 4.
I also like to put on record at this time too that at the present time, you know, I'm married to Queen Mother Cynthia Ann Williams. You know, we were married in 1979, and so that's I think if I'm not mistaken, that's 43 years ago.
Mistaken.
Yeah, well,
Sound like you trying to get in trouble.
I'm gonna let her respond to that, but it's 43 years ago. Yeah, and of that marriage, you know, together we have 4 children. They're grown now, adults as we may say. You know, the oldest one is Nikita Trinette, second one, daughter, Manira Ayana, Sharon Denise, and the only son, Michael Jr. Yeah, they're all adults, but that's the children that come from that marriage.
Okay.
And I think you, in terms of my educational background, I started off in elementary school at Lucy Webb. That's located on South Harvey Street here in Greenville. But Lucy, L-U-C-Y, Webb, W-E-B-B. And I attended Lucy Webb probably for a year and a half, because I recall in the 2nd grade, I didn't begin in 2nd grade at Melissa Manning, but it was halfway through the 2nd grade, so we relocated into another area. But my elementary school was Lucy Webb. I attended Melissa Manning. It's located on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Then went there from the middle of the 2nd grade to the 6th grade. Then from the 6th grade, Coleman Junior High. From the 7th through the 9th. Then 10th grade, T.L. Western, located on Archer Street, 901 Archer Street. Then my 11th and 12th grade was at Greenville High School. So I graduated in May of 1976 from Greenville High School.
So did you pursue any further school? You go to college?
Yeah, I attended, commuted back and forth to Moorhead, Mississippi at Mississippi Delta Junior College. I went there for 2 years, and the subject of what I intended to acquire a degree in was electronic technology. So I attended there from 1977 to 1976 to 1978, so that was 2 years. And I got a 2-year degree. I think it's called Associate Applied Science degree in electronic technology from Moorhead, Mississippi. Mm-hmm.
See, you a geek?
I don't know about no geek.
You're a geek like me, huh?
You can call it that.
So did you end up getting a job in the field that you was?
I can answer that real bluntly in one word: no.
Wow.
No.
What?
No. Well,
Care to elaborate on it?
I can elaborate just a little bit, but as I stated, I was a B+ student, so I did well, and I did learn, sufficiently the information related to electronic technology, the academic and the skill part. And so when I graduated, I was seeking employment in that field, or to acquire on-the-job training.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they had a lot of electronic places at that time in Greenville, but I didn't get hired. I went to Sydney Electronics that was existing at that time.
Yeah.
I think of Russian Communication.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
The place has been around a good while.
yeah, it had been around quite a while. But I was unsuccessful in getting hired to be, receive on-the-job training. But I do know of some others who grade average wasn't as high as mine or good as mine, that lived in Greenville and attended Mississippi Delta Junior College also in terms of electronic technology. They got hired. Some of them got hired.
Wow.
And I always say that, you know, their skin suit wasn't the same as my skin suit.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I had a great desire in that vocation. I still do, in a way. But that's what I want to make my vocation to be at that time. You know, I was in the so-called job market, just like, you know, anybody else that's seeking to take care of themselves financially and with a family. So I started just seeking out other ways of acquiring finance, you know, job-wise. And so I ended up, I think I would say it was probably my first job, so-called former job, was at Cleaver Brooks. Cleaver Brooks, and I think they used to make boilers there. They did a lot of welding at Cleaver Brooks. Made the big, well, they did a variety of welders, but I recall those big boilers that you find, you know, in houses and other work facilities. They did a lot of that. Well, I worked at Cleaver Brooks for, I think, almost 2 years, and they went on strike. And without getting into all the details of that, but many of us the union went on strike because we was out there picketing and on strike for more money, better wages. And so while being out on strike, just like most of the other workers, I started seeking other forms of legitimate employment. So I acquired a job at Morrison Cafeteria during that time, because many of us at Cleaver Brooks, we didn't. After the strike was over, we didn't get called back. You know, so that was something to deal with also. But I started working at Morrison Cafeteria during that time. This is late 1970s, and I was hired there and a young lady was training me as what they call a second cook. I mean, she was the main cook, so I got hired to be trained as a cook to help her with the work. You know, and so I also worked part-time during this same time frame at Broadway Laundry and at I can't think of the oil mill, but it was an oil mill in existence at that time on Union Street.
Right. Where the Riverwalk Apartments is.
Somewhere, right, that's where the oil mill, I can't think of the name. But it was connected to the oil mill that was on Nelson Street also.
The trucks used to, I lived on Wisniewski, and the trucks used to come down our street to get to the oil mill on Union Street.
Yeah,
I remember that. That was a little bitty boy.
Yeah, it was during that time. Yeah, man.
Have you always lived in Mississippi?
No, I haven't. The only place that I have lived at, it was Harlem, New York, or New York City. Most people just straight out say New York City, but it was particularly when I zero in on Harlem, New York. Yeah. around August of 1981, my father, along with my wife, we decided to go visit my grandmother and my paternal grandmother and other relatives on my father's side, and they lived in Harlem, New York. Mm-hmm. And so we had the intention of going there to visit them for 2 weeks, really, just 2 weeks. And matter of fact, those family members on my father's side, they were originally from Greenville, but they left here during the early 1960s. And so when we went to visit them, this is in August of 1981, with the intention of just staying there for 2 weeks. My father did. He stayed there for 2 weeks, and my wife also too. But he came back, and my wife and I, we stayed. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Cut that out. Any reason? For what reason did you stay? Y'all, did you just end up liking it, or?
Well, the reason why we stayed, my wife and I, as I stated earlier, I was working at the last job I had in Greenville, was working at Morrison Cafeteria. And when we decided to go to New York for this 2 weeks, I actually quit working. I just walked away. My mother laughed at me right now because she said, "Mike, you walked away and you still ain't returned back." We talk about it now because she's my mother and she know how I am and stuff like that. And we laugh at it like it was funny, but she knew how I feel emotionally and intellectually. So really, I walked away from Morrison, and then went to New York with my father and my wife, and I didn't have a job really to come back to. I say it like that. I was kind of free, and so along with the urgings of my cousins at that time, male and female, and my aunt, they wanted me really to stay. So, you can do better because they from Mississippi, they from the Delta, and they recall those harsh times. And so that images was in their minds about, like, my wife and I, like, okay, you still down there, but we know where you come from because they came from here. So, and they knew what it felt. They knew what New York could offer to me and my wife. So they really convinced me to just check it out. Just stay a while. See, can you find some work and living quarters and build yourself up. So I decided to do that, and that's what I did.
Well, is New York where you began to seek the knowledge and be on your journey? Is that? Yeah, laughing at that.
I'm not laughing at you, man. I'm not laughing at you. No. But New York, for me personally, wasn't the beginning or my quest, as I say, concerning myself of seeking knowledge of self. That quest and that urge had already begun long before I so-called relocated to New York, or Harlem, New York. It goes back to my early days, my early years. I mean, I can pinpoint some of my former years of growing up, that desire of seeking knowledge, seeking to understand, seeking to know. That curiosity has always been there long before New York.
Well, you told us how you grew up in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Greenville.
Yes, sir.
and we know about you in Greenville.
Yeah.
So what were some of the adventures, or what was it like just living there in New York for what I say, a country boy, let's say.
You can say it like that.
Going to the city.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen movies growing up
Mm-hmm.
of country boys moving to the city, and some of them turned to blues singers, entertainers, and the city life ended up being too fast for them, and they crashed.
Yeah.
So did you kind of witness some of that in your personal?
I didn't experience any of that, but I seen it going on all around me, you know, with some family members and just other people in general, you know. But I can say it like this: my quest for knowledge of self, right, had begun years ago in Greenville, Mississippi, right, the backwoods of the Mississippi Delta. When I got to New York, I realized and I witnessed that it just opened up for me greater opportunity to acquire that knowledge of self, you know, people, places, and things. So it was just more expansive. So I already had a sense of aim, purpose, and direction in terms of the quest for knowledge and understanding, or to satisfy this deep urge of curiosity, right? I already had that. So when I went to New York, I just had a greater opportunity to fulfill that with the aim, purpose, and direction that I already had. So I wasn't susceptible to getting off the track, as they say, you know, or falling into certain social potholes of life, you know. So I already had some kind of built-in mechanism to prevent that from happening.
So in that quest, can we say that you became a bookhead?
It can be said that I started applying myself, of applying my head into books, you know, because was the first, how can I say it, opportunity to start exploring. You know, it was easy to do because the information, knowledge was already in books, and they were all around me. You know what I'm saying? So I just had to identify them, and along by observing, paying attention, listening, because, you know, I listened to various talk shows, radio talk shows in Harlem, emanating from the Apollo Theater, you know. It was black orientated, so-called black orientated. So the availability was awesome, say it like that, and in book form and from various groups, you know, because they had in Harlem at that time, people were different organizations and scholars and things were what they call street speakers. You know, they'll set up a ladder most time on 125th Street in different places and just start speaking and educating the people. Those, the passersby, those who stop, pay attention, crowd together, gather around. So education was a social thing. Knowledge and information was available, was readily available, whether you went to a library or not, because then you had a variety of bookstores, right? That if you were a seeker of knowledge and you had the finance to whatever degree to purchase books, you can self-teach yourself. A lot of people taught themselves through books and through tapes and listening. And I mean, it's just many ways of doing a combination. I put it like that, a combination ways of learning. If you have this desire to learn, to know, and to understand. They had in Harlem, downtown Manhattan, because Harlem is a part of one of the boroughs that they call Manhattan. People hear about the Bronx, you got the Brooklyn, you got Staten Island, but Harlem itself is in Manhattan, the borough that they call Manhattan. So in lower Manhattan, you can go by train or bus, however you get to lower Manhattan. They had a extensive used bookstores, right? So I used to go by train most of the time to lower Manhattan, and some days out of the week, sometimes I go 2 or 3 times, right? And I would visit these used bookstores, just browsing around. And most time, or majority of the time, I would come out of those bookstores because they, with at least 2 bags, brown paper bag, big bags of used books, and for maybe $20, $25. I mean, I can have a whole bag full of books, arm full of books, and only pay $25 for all the books. Because you find these used books still in good shape. Some of them may be used, they may be new books, but you're only paying 10 cents or 15 cents or 25 cents for these books because they're in a used bookstore. So it was easy to pay $25 and accumulate at least 2 big bags of books. And that's what I did most of the time on a regular basis. I bought books in other places than used bookstores, but that's how the accumulation of knowledge within books, that's how I accumulated at the beginning stage of my so-called quest for knowledge in terms of learning in books. Before or after arriving in Harlem, New York. I don't even know where to start to saying how many books that I think I might have, because I got a variety of books on almost every subject. And it's not just, someone may say directly the information in these books concern about the history of a people or individual, but all knowledge really in truth is some shape, form, or fashion is related to the growth and development of people and individuals. So I got books, history books. I mean, the subject is unlimited. Got books on how they recipe books, books on birds, books on bees, insects, animals, along with historical, social, political, historical information. So the subject matter is unlimited. So I got, whether it be paperback form, hardback, or just regular medium-sized paperback books. I mean, it's unlimited. It's unlimited. The form of the information and the size of the book, whether, like I said, whether it's paperback or not, I mean, it's just unlimited. What I'm doing is just stirring about, really trying to reorganize some of the material that I have accumulated over the years, and this is just a portion of it, probably not even a fourth of a fourth, but the bulk of the material, whether it be tapes, books, printout material, records, videos, cassette tapes, I mean, you name it, it's in stored away right now at this time. And so this is just as I said, a portion that I've been working with over the last 2 or 3 years since the house fire, and it is what it is. So what I'm doing today is just stirring about, trying to go through some of the containers that I have with various material in it, such as books and, as I said, tapes, paperwork, newspaper articles, newspapers. I mean, you name it. So that's all I'm doing today, just stirring about and trying to re-examine some of the material that's in these crates that I have, trying to sort it out and see what's what and go from there. I've been putting like pieces of tape on the crates, trying to label to identify the type of books and material that may be in the crates, you know. So, for instance, like, which I don't have it on here right now, I took that off, but some of the books that people may call black books, I label it original, and it'd be a variety, you know, historical books, biographies, of our ancestors, you know, past, and some of the ones people that's still living right in the area of what I call African or Aboriginal, original, can I put it, Moorish cultural information. It might not came out right, but you got an idea of what I'm talking about. So, and as I stated to Brother Mike Check, the information, the books, and material that's in different crates, it's a variety. I mean, it covers all areas just about. I mean, books on history, books on culture, books on nature, books on public speaking, books on meditation. I mean, you name it. A sample of these topics. There are some books here that consist of that. Last 20 some years or 30 years, that's you. And you might well go and make the best out of it. You know, zero in on, because that's my DNA. Yep. Or my assignment or whatever. Can't escape it. And that's the deep, man. And I guess you can call that what? Maybe like among many things, like a person's life work. And what I've been doing, and what I've been aspiring to do, and what I'm doing now, that's like your life purpose, you know, a major purpose in life. And so, more coming to grips with that more and more, and seeking to do it better, take it to the highest level, and fulfill that spiritual assignment. That's it. In the midst of all the other cares of life. So that's where I guess the mindset of, or the technique of focus and concentration come into play. You know, eliminating or prioritizing, I say it like that, prioritizing certain things of life. Because you know that there are many things that are important, that we desire. But there's one particular area, we might call that the soul or the trunk, like the trunk of a tree. All these other desires and positive things in life, they like branches that fit on, grow from that trunk. So that's a person's life. You know, find that soul urge and accepting it, embracing it, and fulfilling that spiritual assignment, as I said. Where you get that from? Why are you saying that? It's not like I can't prove or validate or substantiate what I'm saying. So I use the word in my opinion. And yeah. So stuff about tapes, videos, books over there behind there that I'm in these crates that I'm gonna go through. in here in this particular crate, dealing with Malcolm X, Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Minister Farrakhan, Nation of Islam, and so forth and so on. The Moors in Spain. Another book. Those who know don't say. Those are a popular quote coming from the Nation of Islam, but it's also I think one of the Chinese philosophers made a similar quote, a statement that those who know don't say, and those who say don't know. I've seen Malcolm X most of that. Earlier biography by this brother here on the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And even though some members of the nation, doing some writing, especially Wesley Muhammad, putting out another book with right now at this time, well, the nation's version of, and based on his research and what happened between Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the assassination of Malcolm X. Of our so-called black scholars in America. I think this book is still in print, but I think Mr. Andrew Billinger, I think he was a psychologist or sociologist or whatever, but he wrote a lot of work on the black family. And this is just one. Let's see what year. Right. 1992. Believe the hype. Fighting cultural misinformation about African Americans. It's about one of our queen sisters. Let's see what year it was printed. That's it right now. 1995. Like I said, these crates that I'm trying to put in some order and see what is what, and narrow it down into smaller crates. Some ancient Egypt or Kemet. Just a small sample. Continent of Africa, the West, and the rest of us, white predators, black slavers, and the African elite. Imperialism and dependency is dealing with obstacles to African development. Africa betrayed. Like I say, the workers here, we've been affected. I call this the social Bible of Greenville and Delta, Mississippi. Written by an author. He's deceased now. A few years ago, he made his spiritual transition, but I think he was from California, certain part of California. Dr. Clyde Woods. And this book deals with all the history, important history, the organizations and people who brought Greenville and Delta, Mississippi socially, economically, and politically to where it's at now. All the major players to deal with the Delta Council, Mississippi Employment agency. All this history is in this book. That's why I call this book and recommend it as the social power for our understanding. If we're really sincere about understanding our predicament here in Greenville and Delta, Mississippi, and the role that all the major organizations at that time that were in opposition to what he called the working class agenda, which was the working class African American agenda, or what he called the blues agenda, right? How they challenged, and it's still in effect today. They challenge, in many ways, so-called plantation regime. There's always been that dynamic. The so-called working class agenda, or what he called the blues agenda, and the plantation regime. We got to know, and how the so-called white organizations, all plotted together to suppress and deny, right, the working class, so-called African Americans, right now to today. And if I'm not mistaken, that the Delta Council came into existence. It's in this book in 1933. Not how we see the Delta Council today. You know, they supporting activity in school in terms of reading better and so forth and so on. But the Delta Council operated and functioned at that time, and even with its changes today, as a government, a regional government within Delta, Mississippi, to manage, right, whether so-called black people lived or died. That's what they did, along with all the members at that time, the Washington County Board of Supervisors, the bankers, the teachers. They all belonged to the Delta Council, and they were all against the best interests of so-called African Americans in Greenville and Delta, Mississippi. We need to know this history and who the main players were. And they may have changed the way they function, operate, change their skin like snakes shed the skin, but they still function, operate basically the same. Peace out.
That's where the money was coming from when I started working with the telephone company.
Yeah, so that was the first job, right?
It wasn't the first job. How can I say it? I said about working at that check cashing place, but that go into the other education stuff with that manpower, whatever. But after the check cashing, or during the check cashing, some events unfolded. That's when I landed to be hired with the telephone company. And when I got that job, I said that was in 1982, latter part of 1982. That was my main employment for the rest of the 11, 12 years that I was up there. But I did work. When I started working with the telephone company in 82, October 82, I worked about a year and a half, part-time though, and this connected with the Knowledge Liberation Bookstore that was in Harlem, world famous Liberation Bookstore in Harlem. But my main employment, once I acquired it, was the New York Telephone Company. And so that really gave me the means of, when we moved into that renovated apartment or whatever, and I was working with the telephone company. So that was my main source of income, the family main source of income, to pay that monthly rent or whatever, and utility bills, whatever bills that had to be paid, and then I had money to be able to purchase books and stuff and do whatever with and not hurt anything. So that being hired with the telephone company and what they paid and wanting a decent job in the city that allowed me to, do what I had to do for myself as an individual, that quest and taking care of family. I got paid every week with the telephone company, right? And I could take one of my weekly salaries, pay the rent for the month, right? And then for the month, right? And then the following week, other weeks that I get paid enough to deal with, food, clothing, and stuff like that, and family, and then still had a check or two that didn't have to go nowhere. So I was juggling, that's how I was formulating. Yeah. So it wasn't like every week my whole check for that month, I said put it in a month time, had to be tied up trying to manage things, take care of things, or owing somebody, or just got to be paid. So there was a little flexibility there. And that's why I kind of joking that we was true anyway, that I bought more quest for knowledge stuff, whether book form or whatever, during that time frame than I was buying clothes. I really didn't need none but my work clothes and some basic general clothes, so I was buying books and stuff. I mean, it wasn't like I'm overdoing it, but when I had the opportunity, I purchased books, like I said, going to used bookstores, regular bookstores, tapes and stuff, because I'm learning purchasing, at that time, cassette tapes. I'm learning that way. I'm listening to radio stations. I'm going to lectures. I mean, I'm buying certain items and stuff that fit into that category of people selling stuff on the street. I mean, it's just explosive. That's why I say it expanded, the opportunity to, you just in this arena, but you need a sense of aim, purpose, and direction, because if not, you can get thrown off track. Because everybody's not questioning for knowledge of self. You got all types of social activities going on, and you in that arena. I was in that arena, So you got to have some sense. You got to have some personal aim that's positive, in direction, and some discipline about yourself. Because all around you, at the same time that you exploring and that you questing, traps are all around you. Social traps are all around you. Yeah.
So, what led you to leave New York and come back to Mississippi?
Well, thinking about it, as me and my wife, and I think two of mature, I could say three, had been there for a while, right? And one of the things that was always in the back of my mind is that my children, they was in a daycare, and 3 daughters, right? Three out of the 4, my daughters, 3 daughters are the oldest. And my thoughts were, I don't want them to grow up in New York, in Harlem, right? I don't want them, because me, myself, and my wife coming from Greenville, the backwoods of Greenville, Mississippi. I knew what that experience, how positive that experience could be, even though with the poverty and lack of this and that and the other, right? So they started attending like Head Start in the community, in the neighborhood, And I knew in the back of my mind, in a few more years, they're gonna have to be going to what we might call regular school, right? Then they will have to learn how to travel by bus, by train, and be susceptible to all the other social activities going on around them. I didn't want that. That was one of my strong desires. I didn't want that. And then I knew also that my wife, her family members are back in Greenville. And even though she didn't say that much, she said something, but I can feel and sense over the few years of us being there that she had this desire to be back where she came from, you know. And I kind of like, my heart was still in Greenville, in the Delta, but my mind had to be in New York. But for many reasons, my heart was still in Greenville. So a combination of all that, and especially with the children, I didn't want them to experience, okay, when they get 12, 13 years old, now they got to go to public school, they got to learn how to travel by bus, to train, and so forth and so on, and then all the social activities that I disapprove of. I just didn't want that for them, and so I had said in my mind, I got to be out of here before that happened. I got to be out of here, you know.
Did you hear nobody there for that?
Yeah. Well, I can say it like this. We decided close to that time, you know, when they were changing or growing by age, right? They, you know, eventually I made it back. I say it like this. I relocated back to Greenville in April of 1993. But a year or so before I personally came back to Greenville or relocated, they came before me. So they were out of that environment, that social atmosphere, before they got to ages like their teenage year, you know, because they were still like, I think the oldest one, they were like, how can I say it? I put it like maybe 6th, 7th grade or something like that, you know, when she made it back here. So the time frame based on the age what I was working against, it happened. You know, they got out of there before their teenage year. Yeah.
So what did you end up doing when you got back to Greenville?
But no work waiting on me when I made it back to Greenville. No job waiting on me. But well, I said some months after I actually made it back in April of 1993 to Greenville, Mississippi, with no formal work or job waiting on me, but I started working with my grandfather or helping him out, you know, because he had retired from the oil mill that we was talking about earlier, or I was talking about earlier, and he had started a lawn care business. And he had all the heavy duty equipment and the lawn service at that time. It was just on its beginning stage from what we know of it today. And so, he had more business that he could handle. And I recall him saying one time, he said, Mike, he called me Mike, he said, Mike, this money coming in is scaring me. Because at that time he had all the banks and stuff, you know, and regular houses. He was cutting the yard there, but he had these businesses. They were, he just had it sold up. and that was the cutting edge. Everybody wasn't cutting grass or in the lawn service like we see it today. So he was on the front end of that, and he was making buku money. You know, he was making buku money, and I started after some months of being back in Greenville. I started helping him out, right? And sometimes I kind of laugh and I talk to my mother and used to tease my grandmother also about it, because we figured he was cheap. And really, I always say I wasn't working with him. He was using my labor. And he just giving me something like I'm still a little boy or something, like I'm a child, you know. Like he just giving me a few dollars like to help me along. But man, I got a family. You know, you ain't really paying me. You using my service, but you just giving me something like you just helping me out. That wasn't good enough. So I think that went for about 3 or 4 months, or especially during the summer months. And I kind of got poison oak at that time on my hands and on my legs working with him. And man, that was real bad too for me. Sometimes I was crying, man, trying to heal myself. But I stopped with that eventually. And then I think I got through a friend of mine who was working at Shotgun Barbecue that was located then on Central Street. So I got him hired with them as and I think Shotgun had just opened up too. And so I was their first so-called smokehouse person, you know, doing the cooking of the different types of meat back in the smokehouse. And so that was my kind of first formal job of being back here in Greenville. Yeah. But anyway, I worked for about a year and a half at Shotgun Barbecue on Central Street, and during that time of employment there, I had a friend of mine who was the owner of Fred's Stop and Shop that was located on the corner of 1800 block of East Alexander and South Colorado. He made an offer to me while I'm still working at Shotgun to pay me a little bit more to come help him out at Fred's Stop and Shop. So eventually I left Shotgun and started working with him, and maybe like you may call a short order cook or whatever, because he had a restaurant, he had a convenience store, but he had an area where he cooked in the store. So he wanted me to be that cook, and so that's what I ended up doing. So, and there was, I would say the time frame probably was like late 94 going into the early 95, and I worked there and I got hired with Greenville Fire Department. I applied while working for Fred or with Fred. I always say working with him because I wasn't working for him, you know, or working for nobody, but I'm working with people. So it was like, got hired with Greenville Fire Department after filling out our application and being informed that they were hiring, and all I had to do was fill that application out at City Hall and then wait for the trial. And I got hired in October 3rd, 1995 at the fire department, and the rest is history, because for the next 20-some years I eventually retired at Greenville Fire Department. So that began my journey in terms of main employment after I relocated back to Greenville. And so for the next 20-some, 22, 23, 25 years, the Greenville Fire Department was my main source of income or work or job. Long before the retirement, well, all along as I'm working before the retirement, I'm still involved in many social activities and community work. So that hadn't stopped. So with the experience coming from the work and activities that I was involved in, when I got to retirement, my experience in terms of social involvement decreased because I've experienced the condition of the people. Some people wasn't open enough for the reception of different types of knowledge and information and engagement. So coming with, how can I phrase it? Get into my retirement, my personal engagement with organizations, groups, and people, it declined also based on my experience. But my sharing of knowledge and information through other forms, because you look at our time has changed. We're looking at they didn't have internet then, during this time when I was socially and more involved in a vital way, with community activity and work. So things that happen based on the changes in the world, in the form of trying to communicate with people, that has been altered. So making a long story short on that, people are more open now to other forms of communication instead of direct involvement. I'm trying to make it make sense because people are more dependent in other ways and don't want to do or don't do the necessary personal research and activity to get to sit along with others and learn and to study. So that has changed in a sense, and so that brought about a change in the way that I engage myself with people or try to inform people or educate people. And what I put it all together and trying to, what I consider my, in a short way of saying it, my spiritual assignment of enlightened minds, empowering people, enhancing, enriching, and elevating and transforming as many lives as possible. The way of doing that has changed, so I adjusted myself to the change. It's still direct involvement with some people, but not in the way that it used to be. Over the 20-some years that I was more actively involved in a social way before my so-called retirement with the Greenville Fire Department. Things have changed. People have changed. Things have changed in our world. Did that make any sense?
Mm-hmm. So, in overall,
yeah,
we now understand you personally. We know personal information about you because you're always giving information out to people, but a lot of folks don't know who you are, don't know nothing about you.
right.
So I guess we covered that now.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, the one thing you are good at
Mm-hmm.
is giving out information. So I say this, what piece of information will you give to people now about today in time? Summing it up, we ended the show.
Well,
Let's say, what advice would you give those who's listening and coming behind you, so on and so on?
they're seeking to know.
They're seeking.
That was what you're saying too.
Yeah, that's what
Well, there's much advice that I could offer brothers and sisters who are on a journey or on a quest at this day and time, seeking accurate knowledge of self. Now, most time I summarize it by saying, as far as so-called African people, original people, so-called black people, I make reference to what I call two pillars of ascension. You know, two pillars that we must have to rise up on, to raise ourselves up from the so-called grave of ignorance, of not knowing this. And those two pillars are what's called the historical and the spiritual. Because from the historical and the spiritual, we get a more accurate identification of who we are. When you look into our history, and I know people play with the word history, you know, break it up. History is one thing, but our story is another. But I'm talking about the history in the technical sense of the meaning of the word, which simply means to look into, to look back, to investigate, to research, to enter something, to in a meticulous way, you know, seeking to know and seeking to understand. So that's the way I'm using it, and it is our story. But that's one pillar. In the spiritual, I'm talking about, most people call it, you know, the metaphysical component. So those are two pillars: the historical or our historical, and the metaphysical, that we need to raise ourselves up. So our question for the knowledge of self really boils down, it's the knowledge of your historical self and your spiritual self. And that's found in that information, that body of knowledge. We must know the accurate history of ourselves. And we must, at this day and time, in this so-called Aquarian age, a lot of emphasis is going on with the spiritual or the metaphysical, that which is the spiritual. We need more in-depth knowledge and understanding of those two pillars for our ascension, for our liberation, to be raised up. So I would recommend that one who's questioning for the knowledge of self, which is quote unquote the knowledge of God, because the knowledge of self is the knowledge of God if we really understand. So apply yourself in that research, apply yourself in that study, apply yourself in that arena, the historical and the spiritual, and you won't be disappointed. And listen to others, research others, study others, examine what they say and what they don't say. I mean, it's re-education. The bottom line is all about re-education. We're not going anywhere until we re-educated into the knowledge of self. balance, harmony, equilibrium, and so forth and so on. And that came to me during the early 80s. So you got MuWanga, Sadaka. Sadaka is an East African term, Swahili, that means a spiritual offering. It simply means a spiritual offering. Sadaka. And Mantu, divine essence. Nemsayu, that's the last part of the name. Nemsayu, that's ancient Kemetic, come from the ancient Kemetic language. Nemsayu is one who enlightens the people.